Okay, so today is January 6th, 2023, and we'll talk about three architects. We'll begin with Victor Horta, and then two others will follow. So Victor Pierre Horta, French, born as you see January 6, 1861, and died in 1947, was a Belgian architect and designer and one of the founders of the Art Nouveau movement. His Hotel Tassel in Brussels, built in 1892-1893, is often considered the first Art Nouveau house, and along with three of his other early houses is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So how old was he when he built it? 1891. So about 33 years old. He was still a young architect when he built this very famous Hotel Tassel. The curving stylized vegetal forms that Horta used influenced many others, including the French architect Hector Guimard, who used it in the first house he designed in Paris and in the entrances he designed for the Paris metro. He designed a number of these entrances to the Paris subway. He's also considered a precursor of modern architecture for his open floor plans and his innovative use of iron, steel, and glass. That is Victor Horta. His later work moved away from Art Nouveau and became more geometric and formal, with classical touches such as columns. He made a highly original use of steel frames and skylights to bring light into the structure's open floor plans and finally designed decorative details. Decorative details? What am I reading here? I will ask the audience here, how much decorative details do you do? His later major works included the Maison du Peuple, which was destroyed, unbelievable actually, in Brussels, the Center for Fine Arts in Brussels, and the Brussels Central Station. This was the man with some of his illegal work, if we consider ornament illegal, but it shouldn't be. A very serious man who knew what he was doing, a sensitive man, and we need more sensitive architects. One of his interiors, as you can see again, the value of ornament. The architect, the paradigmatic architect in an Art Nouveau world, which he initiated, some drawings of Victor Horta. What am I looking at here? Didn't he know about the existence of the T-square and the rectangle? Really, this is almost unacceptable. How could he draw something like this? Or like this? Anyway, but the Art Nouveau sensitivity came back, no, didn't it? Because of some late experiments and accomplishments with the help of parametric design and so on. But look here, look at this floor plan. Is there anything wrong with it? I don't think it is. I think the vegetal world, the plants, evoke forces in nature which we shouldn't ignore. Again, ornament. Now, Hotel Tassel, a very important work by him. We already mentioned it in Brussels or Brussels. And, after all, to reduce architecture to space is simply to reduce it dramatically. Architecture is more than just space. You know, I mean, if we remove this parapet here, you know, we impoverish the building. That's what we do, and we don't want to do that, do we? Now, if this building has some spatial virtues as well, it does. But again, architecture is more than just space. In fact, an artist turned architect like Vito Acconci said that architecture is actually not about space, it's about time. That's what he said, and some people think like him too. Anyway, it's a fine building, but it's a fine building, part of a frontal, you know, succession of buildings, one near the other. It's totally integrated in the fabric of the, you know, of the city. It's as opposed to Villa Capra, which stands alone on top of a hill. But I think, you know, he did a lot. And that's why this building is protected now, you know, by UNESCO. And that's why we talk about it now. Now look at this interior. Is there anything wrong with it? I don't think it is. Again, why are we reducing architecture so dramatically to the banality of simplistic functionalism? What about beauty? What's wrong with beauty? Well, we need beauty. Dostoevsky even said beauty will save the world. Why didn't he say functionalism will save the world? Because it will not. It never did and it never will. I mean, you could position magnificently, in a sublime way, the refrigerator in the kitchen. It will still not save the world. Nor the formidable, ideal, perfect, you know, the most perfect parking lot in the world will not save the world. But beauty will. I agree with Dostoevsky. Anyway, art, stained glass windows, the arabesque of detail, all these things which are absent today because I don't know why, actually. Look at the floor here. You know, somebody had joy when creating that design for the floor. We don't even think about doing design for the floor any longer. We are only interested in space. But maybe here the space is not so spectacular. Maybe it's not too simplistic either, but maybe it's not so spectacular. But because of the design of the walls and the floor and the, you know, the parapet and the doors, it becomes rich and interesting and engaging and inspiring. Do you see the importance of the ornament? And we are talking about a modern architect. We are not talking about architecture, I don't know how many centuries ago. Although ornament always existed and always will. You cannot separate architecture from ornament. Although we try hard since the beginning of the 20th century. But anyway, I do think ornament brings joy to architecture because it's about the capriciousness, the lyricism of the human soul, which manifests itself in this case in this way. There are many other ways. In terms of functionalists, two architects can arrive at the same so-called solution. But in terms of ornament, no, because the ornament belongs to the subjectivity of each architect or each artist. If you are true to yourself, you generate your own ornament, which is different from the ornament of someone else. But if you are to place correctly a refrigerator in a kitchen 2 meters by 3 meters, it's very possible that two architects, if not 100 architects, will place ideally that refrigerator in the same spot. subjectivity, I think, is very important to architecture. And without subjectivity, it will never be called art. And these are the plans. Of course, they are harmonious and they are designed well. And of course, even the space, you know, is interesting in some places. But it's a whole. It's like an organism. And the ornaments contribute to the richness and wholeness of that whole. So with skill and sensitivity, much can be done between two parallel walls. And this is the case here. Between two parallel walls, he created this hotel, which is a masterpiece of Art Nouveau architecture. But again, if you remove the ornaments, you get much less. Victor Horta, as a young man, he was a young man when he built it. He built it for a scientist and professor. It is generally considered as the first true Art Nouveau building because of its highly innovative plan and its groundbreaking use of materials and decoration. Together with other three townhouses by Victor Horta, including Horta's own house and atelier, it was put on UNESCO. We know this already. And if you visit Brussels or Brussels, you will probably not forget to visit it. In a certain way, this ornamentation attempts to bring back nature to architecture, you know, filter through what the ornament is and does. And I really think we need nature concretely or really, or I mean, factually or metaphorically, that is aesthetical. This feminization of architecture through ornament, I think, is highly necessary. If we remain stuck into believing that architecture is just about structure, we are wrong. It's almost like eliminating from the world womanhood or the feminine principle, and that would be fatal. Somebody said, doctoral student here, she said that apparently in India, she had the Indian words for it. A man without a woman is considered a cadaver, you know, a corpse, a dead, a dead being. Indeed, it is so. But I would say it's exactly the same thing with structure without ornament. It is a corpse, un cadavru in Romanian. A building which is only structure is a cadaver, is a corpse, a dead body. Just as man is, apparently, without a woman. Maybe without, apparently. Anyway. Nice building, that's the truth. Happy scientist and professor. Maison Autric, 1893. Towards the outside doesn't look too impressive if you forget looking carefully at the details and the, you know, rather discreet ornaments, but inside is probably more engaging. This was the turn of the century, you know, the end of the 19th century. So, you know, the this artwork here with the, the great invention of the train is trying to bring modernity into an environment which is not too modern. A piano, it must be beautiful there. I mean, try to imagine living there, playing the piano and doing, functionalist architecture in another room, very strict and morose. I wonder, did he live in this? Because it looks like it's the house, the apartment, the house of an architect or something. Maybe he lived here too, or anyway. Another hotel, 1894. Now, these buildings were not for proletarians, of course, but what can we do? Actually, we can do something, and I'm very happy that the modern movement thought of proletarians as well. And I think that the architect, as a social worker, is needed. I think it's important not to forget those who are, less privileged. We might not be able to be like this for all proletarians of the world, but it's important to dedicate our work and our talent for them as well. Again, 1894. Again, the world of the plants brought into architecture. Now, you look at these things and you wonder, why did he complicate himself? Are they structurally needed like this? No, they are not. They are not, but we cannot make an architecture which is only concerned with necessity. We should make one which is also concerned with freedom and, of course, with beauty. He was a major architect, Victor Horta, no doubt. And there are many books on him. And look at this. Why is it we don't make such, useless, capricious, elements of, building, the parapet of a stair? Why? It doesn't even cross our mind, actually. Or should I say our soul or our eyes? A different world, yes. This was 120 years ago, a little more than 120 years ago. But I really think that we need again ornament. Not a decadent ornament, although some decadence will be related to it, because we think that if we indulge in pleasure, because essentially it's about pleasure, the pleasure of drawing, the pleasure of escaping strict necessity. And in that sense, yes, the moralist will condemn it. Now, this one was demolished in 1950. Can you imagine that they demolished something like this? John Ruskin said, in nature, the most beautiful things are the most useless. And he gave us an example, the peacock's tail or the lily. And, it's true. Here I almost see the peacock's tail. Now, what's the function of, why did nature complicate itself in this way to make the peacock's tail so, so beautiful and so uselessly beautiful, or the wings of the butterfly? And I can give many other examples. In other words, if God was nature and was the creator of nature, why wasn't he a functionalist? He was, but he was also, he loved form, he loved beauty, much more than we do, it seems. So this was demolished. Welcome to the brave new world, which came back to Europe. I mean, brave in the sense that, committed vandalism of this sort in the name of, I don't know what. Maybe they created a parking lot there. This happened in the United States where, the infinitely wise North Americans demolished Larkin building, a masterpiece by Frank Lloyd Wright, in order to make a parking lot. Look at those children in the lower right corner. They are delicious, looking at the photographer with the curiosity children often have. It's probably not a very common sight. Today, no child will look like this because everybody has a camera or several, or a mobile phone or several. But at that time, it was an event. Probably the traffic was stopped, and the photographer installed his tripod and his huge camera, to photograph what we look at now. But it was demolished, but it was restored in a way horizontally, if you can believe it. The vertical, the elevation of the building became horizontal in a museum, I guess. You see it here. So it was saved in this way. I almost feel tempted like writing something with the title, The Horizontal Facade. You see it. Well, some elements against the wall are still approximately vertical, but it's an interesting idea in a way, It's still bad that it was destroyed. It was demolished. Villa Carpentier, Victor Horta again. Some people live well. What can we do? And some architects also live well because they build a lot and they build interesting things, and their works become protected by UNESCO and so on. With this one, I have a huge book, actually, Hotel Solvay, an interesting work as well. I'm asking myself, why not begin an architecture project from a detail, let's say from the handle of a door or the parapet of a stair, and then develop the building, the project from there on. Why do we have to start always with the plan and with the functions? Why? Why? Maybe Bernard Tschumi was right. Form follows fiction. And I know a very important architect today who starts his projects with a section. That is the vertical section, because the plan is also a section, but horizontal. What if you start with a section and not with a plan? This obsession with the plan can be understood to an extent, because when you are very concerned with the activity in the building and with the functions. But if you are a little bit more relaxed about this, and you arrive at the wisdom of that in between, function and no function, as Su Fujimoto might say, then you can start even with a detail or a section, a vertical section, and in some other ways. Or you can start with a butterfly's wings, or with a peacock's tail. That is with the beauty of a ceiling like we look at here. Why not? I think the projects will become much more interesting and varied. Again, what made Victor Horta design that? Why did he complicate himself doing that ceiling? Because it's beautiful and because the man was not indifferent to beauty. That's why. And there is a dialogue now between these plants and the ceiling, not only the ceiling, the reflections, the parapets here, the artwork on in the background, and so on. Well, some people would say it's too complicated and it's too heavy. It has too much. I don't know. I wouldn't mind, to be honest with you, living in this building if the rent was affordable. Anyway, moving forward, la bourgeoisie. But I think the role of the artist in general is to épater la bourgeoisie, to shock the bourgeois. And maybe a certain part of the bourgeoisie was shocked at first, by this Art Nouveau architecture. Another hotel, again, the turn of the century, another beautiful ceiling, well lit, naturally lit. And unfortunately, I cannot play this, but you can find all kinds of, this was supposed to, to be a video or to move, not here, but imagine yourself descending this stair or walking up this stair. Wouldn't you feel like an aristocrat or like a king or like a queen? I think so. And compare it with, let's say, entering a banal staircase in a block of flats in Bucharest or somewhere else. You cannot feel the same way. Or compare it with entering a building from the basement after you parked your car there. I mean, the very idea to enter the building from a basement where you park the car is so unromantic. But then, do we need romantic, experiences? I think we do, but the functionalist would say, what are you talking about? There is no need for romantic, feelings or romantic anything. The very word should be banished. While in opposition, I would say we need badly a romantic architecture. And I think Jean Badovici, in his own way, and I'll show a little bit later what I mean. He was a romantic soul who grew up in Bucharest and then left Romania for France. And you'll understand what I mean when we arrive there. We are still in Brussels or Brussels. Again, what made Victor Horta do this here? Why wasn't he happy? I mean, wasn't it enough that he curved the window frame in this way here? Or, what was above the window frame? Why did he need this? And why don't we do something like this any longer? Although some people do, including Zaha Hadid architects, they are able to build buildings kind of like huge ornaments, because that's what parametric design sometimes or often is. The ornamentalization of architecture in 3 dimensions. The whole building becomes a jewel-like or ornament-like. I mean, compare this building with, with this. They are 2 different worlds, are they not? But otherwise, you see the plan of the house is, you know, it can be described even as being rigorous, you know, with that octagon there in the center, and you know, because architecture is related to harmony and order, sometimes to symmetry, and but there is also the power of the diagonal. You see it here, my beloved diagonal. And then the fascination with the octagon. The octagon is so very important in many ways. Even Leonardo da Vinci, I read, he loved the octagon. Many of his sketches for architecture, he didn't build, but he employed the octagon a lot. I made a presentation 1 year ago called number 8 in architecture, and the octagon has 8 sides. So I was showing many examples of octagonal architecture. Another, this is the house and studio of Victor Horta, Rue Américaine. My God, the American street, 1898, 1900. Now look at this joyous, you know, parapets, and look what's going on here. My God, who would do something like this today? A few people do, but very few. Nice building. Of course he enjoyed himself and he enjoyed working here. Look at this, you know, all in metal, you know. Again, can you don't envy the architect who can do something? I envy such an architect, you know, these magnificent, poetical, beautiful complications. He was dreaming with his pencil in his hand. Now we can dream with a mouse in our hand, or you know, using the technologies we have. Of course, at that time there were also great artisans and you know, craftsmen. We don't have any longer those craftsmen, but we have other things. And I understood Elon Musk is working now on Optimus, the humanoid robot. Maybe we can put a humanoid or humanized robot to do these sort of things if we cannot do them any longer. Now, those who claim that architecture is not an art or could not become an art are opposed by the work of Victor Horta and by any architect who is Victor Horta-like. I mean, you know, there is art here. And again, not just the architect, but also the craftsmen, those who transformed the project into a real building. They were themselves artists. Look at these 3 stairs here, one near the other and all different. The functionalist would say, why not just one single stair? Why do we need 3 stairs, one near the other and all different? Because maybe the visceralization of architecture is sometimes interesting and maybe even from certain points of view necessary. Now this one was demolished, you see, 1965. I already mentioned it, the Maison du Peuple, the house of the people. We have a Maison du Peuple also in Bucharest, don't we? but it would require a pharaonic effort to demolish it, in as much as it required a pharaonic effort to build it. Why the Belgians destroyed this building, I don't know. I don't know, and it saddens me. There was nothing wrong with it. In fact, I find it very interesting. And probably one of the largest, if not the largest building built by Victor Horta. So you see, there is madness everywhere, including in Brussels, in Belgium. Sad. And look just at this great, auditorium, or concert hall, or whatever it is, or meeting place. Ornamental structure and structural ornament here, they work together to create a very fine room, and it was demolished. It shows clearly there is no objectivity in architecture. Some people liked it, those who built it, and then other people followed who didn't like it and demolished it. Both so-called humans, but with different tastes. La Maison du Peuple de Bruxelles. It doesn't exist any longer. Another hotel, 1902, another great parapet. Could one become sickened by too much beauty? Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But normally, no. Normally, I think beauty should be an aspiration towards a longing for. Another house for the art critic, a certain art critic. Look how much is happening on this elevation, I mean, all these little details, and there are differences, and you can contemplate this facade of a small building, essentially, I mean, how wide is it? Maybe not, I don't know, maybe less than 6 meters wide, but it has a lot of richness exactly because it welcomed the capriciousness of ornament, which can be found in the interior too. Look at this door and this little window in this door. I guess it's just some kind of a little space with shelves. But this is important. Are we thinking of making such doors for a certain function? For God's sake, why not? A little betrayal of the content of the little closet here. But it is more modern than the buildings left and right, actually, because of this bow window, large bow window, and look at this chimney here. It has gestures of non-conformism. Two, Grand Bazaar, demolished. This is I don't understand these Belgians. But they are not the only ones, Humans build and then humans destroy. But look at this building, why was it destroyed? Why was it demolished? Because it was too different? Because it is in a way different than many other buildings. A Grand Bazaar. Now, 1903, some stores, he became a little bit more modern. He simplified. We read that he returned to an extent to some so-called classical architecture. Sorry about the resolution of the pictures. And we can see they are a little bit, a little bit more simple, these interiors, and towards the outside as well. Or maybe people ran out of money and they couldn't afford any longer. Or maybe those craftsmen who did his earlier works vanished, they died. But from what we read, UNESCO chose to protect his early buildings, not these. Another villa, 1905. Belgian pavilion at the Exposition Internationale des Arts Décoratifs et Industriels, Moderne, 1925. Victor Horta. It was probably demolished. Most buildings built for world exhibitions are doomed to be demolished, sometimes very soon after the expo ends. Details. Now, in the work of Victor Horta, the detail is a world in itself. And when I say details, I'm not referring here. Did you reflect about this? That, for example, in Greek architecture or ancient architecture, the complexity was shown towards the outside of the building, not in the thickness of the wall. The thickness of the wall was made of whatever was used, stone or brick or whatever. But today, if you look at technical details or drawings, there is an immense complexity in the sandwich of a wall, in the all kinds of materials that we use for insulation, for the various, aspects of building. But towards the outside, we just see a white blank surface. Nothing to testify about the richness within the very structure, the very interior, the very thickness of the wall. But here, the complexity is towards the outside. If you make a section through a wall, it will be just either brick or a stone or wood. Nothing exceptional inside, but exceptional outside. Look at here. Look what's going on here. All handmade. I admire it very much. The World as a Labyrinth. This is a book I strongly suggest to you to get from a second-hand bookstore. You can find it. It's a great book, The World as a Labyrinth, Lumea ca Labirint. And you can find it. It's truly one of my preferred books ever, with a great foreword by Andrei Pleșu. I mean, these details are celebrations of nature, of life, of art, of culture. That's what they are. What do we do in order to celebrate the above mentioned? This is from his own house and studio. Again, we are talking about a modern architect. He was modern. After all, the so-called style was called Art Nouveau, the new art. Very nice. Very nice. Bravo, Victor Horta. Very nice. Okay, and now we go to the second architect we'll talk about today, but not before we say again happy birthday to Victor Horta. We'll go to Baldassare Peruzzi, an Italian, little bit less known, but worthy of being known. He lived between 1481 and 1536. So he died at 54. Here is an engraving with him. Now, we don't know for sure if that's exactly how he looked like. Usually, the engravers took some freedom. Plus, often the engravers did their work a long time after those they depicted died, and there were no photographs at that time. So it's difficult to transmit the face of someone through just words. So Baldassare Peruzzi was an Italian architect, you see, born on January 6, 1536, an Italian architect and painter, that is, an artist, born in a small town near Siena, and died in Rome. He worked for many years with Bramante, Raphael, and later Sangallo during the erection of the new St. Peter's. He returned to his native Siena after the sack of Rome in 1527, where he was employed as architect to the Republic. For the Sienese, he built new fortifications for the city and designed, though did not build, a remarkable dam on the Bruna River near Giuncarico. He seems to have moved back to Rome permanently by 1535. He died there the following year and was buried in the Rotunda of the Pantheon near Raphael. Can you imagine how respected he was if he was buried in the Pantheon near Raphael? So he was not a nobody, Baldassare Tommaso Peruzzi. A portrait of Baldassare Peruzzi, Illustratio from La Vita by Giorgio Vasari, edition of 1568. Again, we don't know the veridicity of these engravings, but anyway, some drawings by Peruzzi. Of course, these people drew, during the Renaissance, you expected an architect to draw like an angel. They were artists. Again, those who think architecture is not an art should look at this drawing and should look at the history of art, where architecture is always on the pages of that history of art. Why is it so? Because it is an art. That's why. But functionalism is debating that, of course, with its obsession with the banalities of banalities, of banalities, of banalities. Anyway, one thing is for sure, it is art that exalts the soul, not functionalism. I'm very sorry for the refrigerator and the parking lot. They don't have this power. I never saw one, and it would be the perversion of perversions to arrive at exaltation because of the beauty of a parking lot. It's impossible. People go to the Louvre, to look at Mona Lisa by Leonardo, but I never saw a large group of people, staring at a parking lot, at the immense beauty of a parking lot. Would be the most grotesque sight. Anyway, drawings by Peruzzi. Of course, the perspective was already invented, although Palladio, who lived later, never used perspective. How do you explain it? Andrea Palladio, the quintessential architect, if there ever was one, never used perspective. He made the Teatro Olimpico, where perspective was factually, put to place, but I never saw a perspectival drawing by Andrea Palladio, although perspective was invented at least 150 years, about 150 years earlier, by Piero della Francesca and Brunelleschi. But because he was an artist, you see, he also drew things that have nothing to do with architecture. but they have to do with art. Peruzzi, who found his Domus Eterna near Raphael in the Pantheon. Not bad. Now this is, I don't know if he did himself a scheme for San Pietro. It's possible because his neighbor in Domus Eterna, Raphael, also did. And Michelangelo, of course, contributed, and first Bramante. But it was built as it was built, based on the work of some of them. Michelangelo and Moderno, Raphael contributed. What a world, no? When the church used the greatest artists and architects to build for God, as opposed to, I come back to it, you know, the builders of the great cathedral now being built in Bucharest, where we don't even know, you know, who is actually the architect, if there is an architect. Maybe he's used just for the signature, you know, to sign some drawings, I guess. No attempt to greatness, no. I mean, true greatness, or to, you know, create something highly original. No, no. Paintings, because he also painted. He was also a painter. Look at this. Well, we don't do such things because we are concerned with the refrigerator and the parking lot. We have no time for such useless things. For these dancing beauties, you know. We are not concerned with such things anymore. For us, the refrigerator and the parking lot are the beginning and the end of the world. It's a different spirit. They do a different human beings, I guess. A different interests, different everything. Now, what architect would paint something like this today? Not even John Portman. I'm joking. Of course, John Portman built his mega hotels, but also painted, I guess, abstract paintings, because we don't have any longer the support of that shared symbolic order which religion provided. I mean, these people were anchored in the knowledge received from the Bible, and they just illustrated something that was readable and easily understood by anyone because they knew the Bible. I don't. I'm ashamed to say it. I don't know exactly what it is depicted here. But at that time, they knew. People knew. Most people knew. Even those illiterates or illiterate. Peruzzi, Giambattista. Architecture. Villa Farnesiana, Rome. This villa was constructed by Baldassare. Sorry, I misspelled, so to speak, his first name, Baldassare. And today, when I sent out the invitation to the presentation, I misspelled his first name. Instead of Bald with D, I wrote B-A-L-T, and then I had to correct myself when immediately I realized the mistake. And now I see I don't remember his first name, Baldassare Peruzzi, 1508, 1511, a Renaissance villa. What can we do? We see ornament here too at the top of the building, not as exalted like in the case of Victor Horta and his Art Nouveau, but still is there. And the inside you can imagine. I hope I have pictures from the inside too. All walls, all ceilings, all floors covered with, look, in those buildings, you didn't have to hang a painting on the white wall because there was no white wall and there was no room. Every every part of it, I guess it was some kind of a generalized horror vacui. You know, people covered everything, you know, like here also with trompe l'oeil, you know, because this is painted. There are no open windows there. This is painted on the wall. Or are they real windows? Some of them are real, some of them are just painted. You know, like this so-called exit on the balcony or the loggia. There is nothing to exit through here. It's just a wall. So it's trompe l'oeil. It's an illusion, optical effect. But they found joy, I guess, in creating these optical effects. Towards the outside the building, okay, it's not highly decorative, but inside, I ask the students here, you know, why don't you include, you know, elements of figurative art or maybe even abstract art in the fragments of the building, you know, both inside and outside. Bring in sculpture, invent the sculpture. Why not? Make a fountain too. Are we thinking of fountains? Although it's a problem now, you know, consuming the water. It is a problem and it's a real problem. Raphael, the Logia di Psyche and on Pendentives. This was done by Raphael, who died at 37, but until that age, 37, he became one of the greatest masters of the Renaissance and of art of all times. Do we have such ambitions these days? No, of course not. No, because we are concerned with the refrigerator and the parking lot. We cannot lose our day and our time. Plus, we have to watch a certain film on Netflix or HBO at a certain hour. And after that useless film, another one, equally useless and vicious, Sala delle Prospettive. You know, here, this is trompe l'oeil. You see the world through the world. This is a world. But the trompe l'oeil had a meaning, you know, it was an attempt to literally break the wall, break the room, break the box. And if you couldn't do it factually, you did it, you know, through illusions, through the illusions of art. You know that it was painted even the city outside, but this is a wall. These people are staring at the wall. Sorry about the Alami stamp. You know, this Alami makes me sick. You know, with the authorship. You know, they ruin, and they have nice pictures, but they put the, you know, disgracious name everywhere, as if one was not enough. Palazzo Massimo alla Colonna. The Palazzo Massimo alla Colonna is a Renaissance palace in Rome, Italy. The palace was designed by Baldassare Peruzzi in 1532-1536, so almost 500 years ago, on a site of three contiguous palaces owned by the old Roman Massimo family and built after arson destroyed the earlier structures during the sack of Rome. In addition, the curved facade was dictated by foundations built upon the stands for the stadium. This is probably his best known work and very original, of the Emperor Domitian. It fronts the now busy Corso Vittorio Emanuele II in Rome, a few hundred yards from the front of the church of Sant'Andrea della Valle. And this is the building with its slightly curved facade. Very interesting building, actually. almost manneristic, almost modern in a way. It deserves careful study. And you see the plan at the bottom. So let's see again how it is called, the Palazzo Massimo alle Colonne, because it has those columns there. Still stands 500 years later. A difficult site. And you know, if you look at the plan and you compare it with the main elevation starts from here and here. So I guess it extended this just in order to arrive at the appearance of symmetry, when in fact the factuality of the plan is asymmetrical. This is not the axis of the plan. Interesting. Maybe this play with symmetry, asymmetry is part of the originality of this building and its seductiveness. 500 years old, not a little time span. I always love these old photographs, particularly old photographs of old buildings. But maybe even of newer buildings. An old photograph testifies about the passage of time, and that brings in some melancholy and some nostalgia. And look at the columns. Okay, and now we go to the third presentation today, for those of you who are still here, to Jan Badovici, this unusual Romanian architect who, left Romania at one point, but he's either mentioned a French architect of Romanian origin or a Romanian architect living and working in France. Jan Badovici, 1893-1956. So he was, I think, 6 years younger than his friend Le Corbusier. Yes, none other than Le Corbusier. In fact, there were never two Le Corbusiers and never will be, just one. This was the man, an interesting man, actually, and I think rather frail. He looks very, very thin. I mean, look at this picture. And is famous his romantic relationship with a great designer and architect, Eileen Gray, who was much older than him. I don't know exactly, maybe about 20 years older than him, or maybe not so much, but I remember she was older than him. Maybe there was a kid in him, a frail boy who, I don't know, but he does look like an interesting man, and his name is Jan Badovici. Let's read a little bit about him. Jan Badovici, born January 6, 1893 and died in August 1956, was a French architect and architecture critic of Romanian origin, active in Paris. On other sites, this I took from Wikipedia, it says Romanian architect, but anyway, he was born and grew up in Bucharest, in Romania. So born in Bucharest, Romania, Jan Badovici studied architecture in Paris after World War I. Since 1923, he edited the important French magazine for avant-garde architecture, L'Architecture Vivante, the living architecture. Furthermore, he designed 2 buildings, residential houses for himself, in Vézelay in 1924 and in Paris near Pont de Sèvres. In Roquebrune, Cap Martin, he assisted Eileen Gray. They were lovers until 1932 in designing and constructing a home for themselves, one of the important buildings of the international style, E1027. And I'll explain later what's the code here, what the letter and the numbers mean. After World War II, Badovici was involved in reconstructing and saving the architectural heritage of France in a board called Bâtiments Civils et Palais Nationaux et des Monuments Historiques. There he served as assistant to the chief architect Robert Edouard Camelot. Yeah, so but I would like to actually go back and say that this L'Architecture Vivante, which was the magazine he was the editor-in-chief of and the director, was very, very important. And you can find it even now on sale. They are very expensive because it was promoting avant-garde architecture. And I think we need the avant-garde badly. Otherwise, we die of boredom. Jean Badovici gained reputation not for constructing buildings, but for analyzing and supporting avant-garde architecture. He was an influential critic and mentor of international modern architecture in France since he began editing the magazine L'Architecture Vivante in 1923. Again, the translation, the living architecture. He convinced the publisher Albert Morancet of the importance of such an avant-garde magazine, which ran from 1923 until 1933. So for 10 years, he was the director of this important architecture magazine. L'Architecture Vivante became immediately an influential mouthpiece of the international style, Bauhaus, constructivism, the Stil. Le Corbusier, a friend of Badovici, for instance, became one of the architects whose ideas were frequently discussed in this magazine. Badovici cultivated relations to European avant-garde magazines like Vendingen in Netherlands and Cahiers d'Art in France, founded in 1926. Sorry, I have to move this maddening tab to read because I can't, because it is blocking my text. But you can read. Really, I am mad at Zoom. Every single day I suffer because of it. The tab is blocking the view of the text. And I cannot move it unless I finally succeeded. His friend Christian Zervaux. And he built a house for Christian Zervaux, and we are going to see it. He actually restored an existing building, but he did some very interesting works himself besides running this important architecture magazine, L'Architecture Vivante. Regularly, each issue of L'Architecture Vivante presented a number of architects and their works, but there were also some very few dealing with just one artist, Le Corbusier and Pierre Jeanneret, his cousin. And in 1929, this L'Architecture Vivante presented in detail the work of both him and Eileen Gray, their home E1027. We saw this picture here. He is together with Le Corbusier and Le Corbusier's wife, Yvonne. Maybe they are in the south of France. Of course, on the right is Jean Badovici. They seem to be a little drunk, if you ask me. I don't know if all three of them, but Badovici, and I would include in this select group also Le Corbusier. But you can tell they were good friends, you know. I mean, to have such an intimate photographs being taken of you and Le Corbusier, it would be the hit of your life. And this man, you know, born in Bucharest, he made it there. He was obviously very relaxed vis-à-vis the great master. La maison Batachon-Renaudin à la Tour Rouge à Vézelay. This is the house where where now is the foundation of Christian Zerpo, his friend, who was the founder of Cahiers d'Art, a very important publication also. Vézelay is a very interesting town, and actually I stopped there 4 years ago when I went with some students there to see. Well, no, I'm wrong. We stopped at Auton, but in Vézelay is a very important church where one of the very, very few sculptors who left a name behind them, what's his name? Now that I complicated my life by Gislibertus. Gillibertus. I'm not sure I pronounce well his name, and I apologize. Gislibertus, I think, an unbelievable sculptor, and one of the very few whose signature came down to us. I have a book on this sculptor, and it is amazing. Please check his sculpture of the I don't know if it is a church or a cathedral in Vézelay, in this very town, beautiful old town, maybe medieval town in France, and Auton, Autun, Gislibertus, unbelievable sculptor. Anyway, this is the house. I think it was transformed, it was refurbished by Eileen Gray and Jean Badovici, and now is the foundation of Christian Zerpo, and I think they live there, him and his wife, who was a friend of Pablo Picasso. My God, we are talking here about, I mean, this is how I would love architects to be, to work together with artists, to do things together, to create art, to stimulate each other, and not lead banal lives. Really, the building is not avant-garde, and this is maybe kind of like a paradox, because Jean Badovici was the promoter and mouthpiece for avant-garde, the most avant-garde architects. He built an architecture, and I understood he even liked very old buildings, which he tried to restore. But the restoration included certain levels of creativity, but it was nothing, shocking the old. Small gestures of innovation. So there was continuity and innovation. I don't know exactly. I didn't analyze the building, but I would say it's a good building if it is indeed how Eileen Gray and Jean Badovici envisioned it and did the work. Here is a tower where I understood was built or it existed, and they transformed it. Its only function was to contemplate the landscape from the top. There was no other function for it. Nice. I like the oblongs. I don't know if they were prior to their working there, or I don't know. But anyway, a few pictures. But I do see here, this seems to be with a newer aesthetic somehow, an intervention that has a certain level of modernity. And from what I read, the little I read about these restorations, they restored the 5-6 buildings in this Vézelay. Looking carefully, you discover details that showed originality. So at first you might say, what's creative here? But looking more carefully, you discover. This is another building they worked on, but I only found this picture, which is with this, rather unsatisfactory resolution. He had a dream, Jean Badovici, to create a colony of artists there in Vézelay. And he even, but I couldn't find a picture, Maison des Artistes. He wanted to, I don't know, he purchased them, he restored them. He invited artists and architects to live there together in Vézelay, which is a dream I have too. Jean Badovici, the mystery man. I came across an article of someone on a blog who named Jean Badovici the mystery man. And I feel some affection in these words. Mystery man, because although he was known by, you can imagine, Le Corbusier, but even Christian Zervaux, and not to speak also about his lover, Eileen Gray. He was very involved with various people, with well-known people, but he remained somehow in the shadow. And this is actually something I like, is this man who promoted Le Corbusier. I mean, Le Corbusier promoted himself copiously, but Jean Badovici also did it for him. So obviously there was some kind of good chemistry between them, and he believed in Le Corbusier, and you saw them, I would say, drunk at the table. This was his own house in Vézelay, and the same person who named him, who called him the mystery man, wrote that this was a very modest building, but with the interventions of modernity, very discreet, but very, very sensitive. I like the building very much. I would love to live in such a building myself. I understood that he worked on this building and maybe lived in this building with Eileen Gray. A little building in Vézelay. Now it's very possible he didn't have a lot of money, and maybe that's why he settled for. But I like the building. It has its own poetry. It's modest, but modesty is in this case a quality. And now we arrive. So one more time, we look at the building where Jean Badovici lived in Vézelay. He probably lived in other places. But now we arrive at the masterpiece of the international style, or I don't know if it's just international style. It's probably more, because a good work doesn't fit into the niche of a specific so-called style. It's this building, E1027. In some publications, maybe in most publications, the author is considered Eileen Gray, but they work together on this building. And after a number of years, when they lived together and they separated, Eileen Gray, she probably invested in the building. She had the money, but she left the building to Jean Badovici as a present. This is a scene from the film, from the movie that I mentioned before the presentation started. Now, the man on the right is supposed to be Jean Badovici, played by, I understood, an Italian actor. The man on the left seems to be, Le Corbusier, and the lady Eileen Gray. All three of them characters in, in this film. I forgot his name, but you can find data, so to speak, about it, and even watch it. Jean Badovici and Eileen Gray. E1027 house. In this text, she appears to be the architect, but there is I found there is an archive in Paris where they have drawings for the elevations of the building that are signed by both, that both were considered authors of at least some parts of the building. So the name of the house, E1027, is a code for Eileen Gray and Jean Badovici. E standing for Eileen, 10 for Jean. Why 10 for Jean? Because J is the 10th letter in the alphabet. Then 2 stands for Badovici because B is the second letter of the alphabet, and 7 is Gray because G is the 7th letter of the alphabet. So if we are to translate the name of the building, Eileen, Jean, Badovici, Gray. The encoded name was Eileen Gray's way of showing the relationship as lovers at the time when built. Of course, we could comment a little bit or notice at least the fact that, you know, Jean Badovici is encapsulated, you know, inside the, I mean, in between E, Eileen, and 7, Gray. So he's, maybe it's a, you know, kind of a, you know, a metaphor in a way that he was present in her heart. I don't know. Anyway, the building is where you see the dot, the red dot is right in front of the Mediterranean Sea in the south of France. And this is the building. And it is considered a masterpiece of modern architecture, one that some even think might have, you know, provoked the envy of Le Corbusier, who built not far away from it his now well-known Le Cabanon, his little hut, vacationing hut, and even had a small so-called office, like 2 meters by 4 meters. I used to make presentations about Le Cabanon, very close to this building by Eileen Gray and Jean Badovici. This building behind was some kind of a, you know, hostel or, you know, renting rooms. Apparently was done on a project by Le Corbusier, who was paying for food. This was a restaurant, and near it is Le Cabanon. And I read somewhere that this was built, I think, after Le Corbusier died, based on his drawings, that he left this project some kind of a payment for the fact that he was eating from this restaurant, and maybe he didn't pay for it, something like this. But in the front, we see the E1027 famous house by Eileen Gray and Jean Badovici. And I do believe they work together. They work together, they were in love. So, you know, I cannot imagine Eileen Gray doing all the work while the architect, Jean Badovici, who obviously loved architecture and was very involved with architecture, didn't do anything. No, it was done by both. But Eileen Gray did have a, you know, experience in furniture making and interior design. And in a way, this is a building that where the furniture and the interior plays a very important role, and you'll understand very soon why. It was a strange situation there, and it's not very clear to me what exactly was Le Corbusier doing there. Yes, he was friends with Jean Badovici, but for example, at one point he scribbled, no, he made a so-called artwork called 3 Women on a wall of this villa without the approval of the owners, and it was considered, you know, an act of vandalism, although he thought it was a gift he gave to, you know, to his friends. But why did he call it 3 Women? And you are going to see it, when in fact I understood that he depicted Jean Badovici, Eileen Gray, and another character, a second woman. But it seems that the title of the work is 3 Women. Maybe it was some kind of a reference to the fact that Eileen Gray was openly bisexual, but then might also mean that, I don't know, I don't want to become too explicit or to assume anything. Le Corbusier himself was strange in the erotical field, if I am to call it so. He had, I would say, he had problems. And if you check on the web, you know, erotical drawings of Le Corbusier, you will understand immediately what I mean. Yeah, but it is a great modern building, and it was restored recently. And you know, that mundane film that was made, maybe it's indirectly, you know, kind of an homage to the building itself. But the whole romantic entanglement somehow stirred up the imagination of those who created that film. And this is the plan of the house. It's well, apparently it was drawn mainly, at least, by Eileen Gray, but Jean Badovici was there, of course. You know, they were lovers. They were in love. So, you know, we don't know exactly what he did. This is kind of remarkable about this man, that he was obviously very, very important for the modern movement, but he remains somehow, besides the fact that he ran L'Architecture Vivante, he remains somehow off and almost a little bit unknown, although I read on the web today, in fact, that both him and Eileen Gray are considered, you know, famous, world famous artists. But we see here, you know, apparently Eileen Gray designed the house kind of starting from the furniture and from aspects of kind of what I suggested that is possible in some comments I made earlier. It's something here that, you know, often architects don't do. There is an intimacy here and the concern for detail that most architects don't have. I don't know if I verbalized correctly what I wanted to say, but let's see if we move forward. We see the sections. I was hoping maybe a little bit later on a larger picture with the plan. Here we see in this picture, so this is Villa E1027, and this is the so-called office of Le Corbusier, Cap Martin in front of the Mediterranean Sea. And Le Corbusier actually died at 78 swimming in the waters that we see here at the bottom. That's how he died. Kenneth Frampton said that while swimming towards the south. But yeah, they were friends. They were, you know, there in the summer, at least several months, very close to each other here. But what exactly Le Corbusier was doing there, I don't know. Maybe he liked Eileen Gray too. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that film, which I didn't see, brings some light to the whole affair. I know a Romanian architect, Patricia Irimescu, who told me that probably Le Corbusier built Le Cabanon, that his little hut, vacation hut, and his so-called office, to keep an eye on Eileen Gray, but I don't know. It's also very possible that he was truly a very good friend of Jean Badovici, and Jean Badovici convinced before Christian Zerpo to move to Vézelay. It's possible that Jean Badovici had great persuasive powers, and maybe it was him in a way that convinced Le Corbusier to come in this region of the south of France. I don't know. But it's interesting, nevertheless, that a man born, yes, I'm becoming a little bit patriotic, a man born in Bucharest arrives at such friendships and such, you know, entanglements in a way, you know, romantic entanglements with two famous artists and architects, Le Corbusier and Eileen Gray. And this is the plan. And I like it because I don't know if I can explain. When I look at this, I mean, look at what's going on here. What is this? Why is this corner a little bit curved here? What is going on here? You know, it's like the smallest, you know, just a square inch or a square centimeter becomes highly relevant. It is as if she drew the plans of this villa starting from the smallest things, you know, from so-called details, from the bathtub, from the, you know, little things, and little by little the building grew into a building. And this is not easy to do, but I think I think there is a possible way of doing projects that goes against the common, you know, the common way, where you trace first the structural walls and then inside whatever remains the space defined by those walls, you begin to create, you know, pieces of necessities, you know, furniture, little spaces. Here it seems she started with the small things, or they started with the small things, and drawn in detail, as you can see, and that's how they were built. From the outside, it looks like an almost, you know, it makes me think of maybe Richard or Richard Neutra, other modernist buildings. But this one has a certain spirit that is a little different. Maybe the femininity of this kind of modernism. Now, this is how the building looks like now, where it was refurbished and, you know, it was filmed in that film that I mentioned. Some pictures from the, you know, from the old times. Again, Eileen Gray was mainly, you know, an interior designer, interior architect, interior architecture designer, and furniture designer. Like, I think she said this, or I found this wording relating to this famous villa: furniture makes the room. This should make us think, what if we design a house starting with the furniture? Place the furniture and then create the spaces around the furniture, one room at a time. And the house grows starting from the small and mobile elements that compose, you know, a building in general, a house. And now I show some photographs by this photographer, Mary Godin, of the same building. We are approaching the end of this presentation. We see the Mediterranean Sea where the Le Corbusier, or Le Corbusier Le Grand, died while he was swimming towards the sun. Well, the sun was in front of him, I guess. But anyway, some people think that he was, Le Corbusier probably committed suicide because he was a good swimmer. Yeah, he was 78, but he was a good swimmer. We don't know. But we are going to see at the very end of this presentation something that you never knew probably, or would take you by surprise in relation with Le Corbusier. This, by the way, of Jean Badovici, whose birthday is today. Just some photographs taken by this photographer of this actually remarkable modernist building. I like this conjunction between art and life, you know, between biography, you know, where you don't look just at the building, you also look at the story relating to this building. This is missing, for example, in the case of Villa Savoie or the Falling Water building. There we have the buildings and that's it. I mean, in the case of Falling Water, we know that the son of Mr. Kaufman, who studied even architecture or art history at Columbia, he recommended Frank Lloyd Wright. In the case of Villa Savoie, I think there is some kind of a story too relating to Le Corbusier. I don't know if he was infatuated with Miss probably Savoie, or there are some stories, but here is more than that, and that's why that film came into being, you know. And unfortunately, I don't know its name, because this building was very closely, very organically related to the biography of these three people: Eileen Gray, Jean Badovici, and Le Corbusier. She designed also rugs, and you know, she designed everything. She's considered one of the greatest women architects of the 20th century, and designers, Eileen Gray. But again, and I like this, Jean Badovici, although he was a promoter and had, I understood, great enthusiasm for avant-garde art and architecture remained a little bit in the shadow. This I actually like. I think he was a very special man, Jean Badovici. And I would say Eileen Gray probably would agree with me. Otherwise, she would not have fallen in love with him. And they are forever united for and through this building. It's a case where a love story becomes a building, and maybe we can find other stories in this sense, you know, where a love between two people has effects on the architecture that comes into being. But Beatrice Colomina, who is a very important architecture theoretician and still teaching, I think, at Princeton, and her husband is Mark Wigley, who ran Columbia for 15 years, was the dean, wrote about this vandalism that Le Corbusier provoked in this building with his artwork done on the wall called Three Women. And we are going to see a few pictures of that a little bit later. And look at this. This is the staircase that goes from the inside the building to the terrace. In itself is a creation, no? All done in glass. Maybe it could be considered fragile. I don't know, but it is unexpected. Again, Villa E1027 here, and here is the office of Le Corbusier, where he actually did drawings for Chandigarh. And there are pictures with him doing so. And the great Mediterranean Sea. Of course, it's a great ambiance, a great environment, no? But I don't think it's an accident that Le Corbusier, Eileen Gray, and Jean Badovici found themselves kind of together right there. And here they are again, Jean Badovici on the right, probably drunk. I see some glasses there and the bottle. And Le Corbusier does seem to be a little to be morose. You know, some people get that kind of attitude when they drink too much. I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, but the glasses are rather almost empty on the table, and the wife of Le Corbusier, Yvonne, maybe more lucid than the man. But the most exalted here is indeed Jean Badovici. And here they are, on the left, Eileen Gray, on the right, Jean Badovici, the man born and raised in Bucharest, Romania, the seductive Jean Badovici. Interesting pair. You can imagine that if they stirred up the imagination of some producers in Hollywood or HBO or wherever that movie was made, 1939. Here is the great Le Corbusier Le Grand in the nude. I don't know. I mean, this man was, as I told you, he was without doubt one of the greatest architects ever, but he had peculiarities. Do you see on his right leg a scar? Well, I will read you about that scar because unbelievable things happened to him. On this website, you can read about the scar. You see, the last word is scar, but I will read you what he wrote to his mom, because he was in love with his mom more than perhaps would have been legal to do. We see the scar here. No, I didn't use the right words, but yes, he had a very special relationship with Marie, his mom. I'm talking about Le Corbusier. And you see the scar on his right leg. And now I will read what happened to him from his own report to his mother. This is what he wrote, Le Corbusier. After the first turn of the blades, he had an accident in the Mediterranean Sea, right there in front of the Villa 1027, E1027. Apparently, a boat I don't know, didn't notice him in the water. He didn't notice it. He was hurt. And I will read about it. After the first turn of the blades, I was thrown out of the circuit and seemed not to have been hurt. I reached the surface and breathed air. I hadn't swallowed a drop of water. I saw the boat gliding slowly away. I shouted, hey, wait a second, you went right over me. There may be some damage. Quite automatically, my hand went to my right thigh and my arm fitting nicely inside. I looked down, a big area of blood red water and half my thigh floating like a ray. The fish, attached by a narrow strip of flesh. Throw me a buoy, I'm badly hurt. The yacht headed towards me, throwing me a sort of rope, not too big to be held in one hand. The side of the yacht was too high for anyone to help me. Throw a lifesaver. It comes and I sit inside it. And here are some fishermen coming into port. The boat is low. They hold out their hands and I give them my left hand because I'm holding my thigh together with my right hand. We reach the place I started from on the breakwater. I get up on the jetty. A kind driver appears out of nowhere and helps me sit down beside him. The fisherman gets in the back seat. Hospital. So he was brought to the hospital. They put me on the table and begin sewing me together. This lasts from 6 to midnight in 2 sessions. I've already told you the rest. This is the confession, the report of Le Corbusier to his mother. And this explains that big scar on his right leg. Here we see Le Corbusier inside the building E1027. As you can see, this man fell at home, maybe too much so, inside the living room, I guess, or the bedroom of this villa that Eileen Gray and Jean Badovici built together. You can see Le Corbusier was in a pajama there. What was he doing there? And this is a scene from the movie. Let's call the man in the front Le Corbusier, and let's call the man in the back on the right, the man born in Bucharest and raised in Bucharest, Jean Badovici. Now, 3 women, the work which Beatrice Colomina considers, significant in several ways, and which was a so-called gift coming from Le Corbusier to Eileen Gray and Jean Badovici. Here it is. It's called 3 Women, but I read somewhere that actually depicts Eileen Gray and Jean Badovici, and I guess the third woman or the third person is a woman or was supposed to be a woman. Some say that this might be some kind of relation with the fact that Eileen Gray was, openly bisexual. I don't know. But this is the work, if we are to call it so, but I guess we could. The work of Le Corbusier that nobody asked him to do, and he did. And he considered it, but try to find the article, the writing of Beatrice Colomina about it, because it is considered, an act of vandalism, what Le Corbusier did inside this building. That it is erotical, it's obvious. And I think this is Beatrice Colomina, if I'm not mistaken. A very important theoretician and architecture critic and teaching at Princeton in the United States. And she was even one of the curators, together with her husband, Mark Quigley, of one of the Istanbul biennials of design and architecture and so on. Anyway, that's it. So let's wish happy birthday again to Baldassare Peruzzi and to Victor Horta and to Jean Badovici.